That patch of Nevada desert, even the name Area 51, it just hums with secrets, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Like there's this whole other story happening just, out of sight.
Mm-hmm.
Today, that's exactly where we're headed. We're plunging right into the enigma that is Area 51.
Exactly. And to really get a handle on this, we've pulled together a pretty fascinating array of sources.
Okay.
Think transcripts from history's ancient aliens, for the more, well, out there possibilities.
Right.
Alongside National Geographic's experts reveal what really happened, which gives a much more sort of grounded perspective.
Gotcha.
We're also digging into Bob Lazar's famous story on the Joe Rogan Experience with Jeremy Corbell.
Oh, yeah, Lazar. And the rabbit hole goes even deeper, right?
Yeah.
We've got Annie Jacobson's very different take on its origin.
Completely different, yeah.
Dr. Stephen Greer's accounts from alleged contactees, and even a look at how Area 51 is viewed internationally, thanks to the Spanish-language channel Astroway.
Right. So our mission today, it's pretty simple, really, to sift through all the decades of speculation, the rumors, and the bits of documented history to try and figure out what truly makes Area 51 so captivating.
Let's do it. Where do we start? Ground level.
Let's start right there. Grounding ourselves in the physical reality. National Geographic really highlights the sheer isolation of the place.
Mm-hmm.
Chose back in the 50s specifically because it was a, quote, very sparsely populated area of Nevada. Perfect for keeping things hidden.
No kidding. And the security isn't just like a sign and a flimsy fence, is it?
Not at all. We're talking these orange markers, first kind of subtle maybe, but then you hit magnetic sensors right in Groom Lake Road.
Because they know you're coming.
They know you're there. And as you get closer, it's like something out of a movie. Security outposts, guards, cameras just everywhere.
And the warnings are serious. Deadly force serious.
Oh, yeah. A former guard, quoted by National Geographic, basically said trespassers looking like they were trying to get in were considered, well, fair game. It's a serious deterrent. And Astroway adds another layer, the restricted airspace, R408N, constantly monitored.
Right, so they're watching the skies, too.
You bet. Unauthorized planes, intercepted, fast. It's not just about keeping people out on the ground.
And Astroway also mentioned the internal security, the need to know stuff.
Exactly. Multi-layer doesn't even cover it. Inside the base, access is super tightly controlled. You need specific authorizations, credentials. Everything runs on that need-to-know principle.
It makes sense. Okay, so let's rewind the early days. How did it all begin?
Right. National Geographic takes us back to the 1950s. The CIA and the Air Force, they needed a very secluded spot.
For the U-2 spy plane, right.
Precisely. To develop and test the U-2. And Groom Lake offered that perfect cloak of, isolation.
And the initial setup was pretty basic, I gather.
Surprisingly basic, yeah. Like a single runway, a small control tower, just a couple of hangars, and trailers for the workers.
Sounds rough.
A U-2 veteran, Tony Bavacqua, he described it as pretty sparse. Said there wasn't even TV or radio. Just work.
Really emphasizes the focus, doesn't it? Keep it secret. Get the job done.
Absolutely. And Bavacqua also mentioned the intense scrutiny everyone working there was under, right from the start. Ironclad rules about what you could talk about, even with your family. Total lockdown on information.
And they had a cover story for the U-2 sightings, too.
Oh, yeah. The CIA cooked up a cover story because, well, people were seeing these high-flying things they couldn't explain, had to protect the real purpose, Cold War reconnaissance.
Okay, so U-2, then things ramped up. The Oxcart project.
Exactly. The A-12 spy plane, codenamed Oxcart. National Geographic explains this thing was a massive leap forward. Faster, much hotter than the U-2.
And this is where it gets really interesting with the materials, right? The titanium.
Get this, yes. The titanium needed for its construction, apparently sourced from the Soviet Union.
No way, during the Cold War.
Yep. Through a whole network of dummy companies. Talk about a cloak and dagger operation.
That's kind of wild, and the engineering challenges must have been huge.
It's incredible. Peter Law, a thermodynamic engineer on it, talked about the extreme temperatures the A-12 had to handle. And Thornton T.D. Barnes mentioned the compartmentation. Engineers working on different bits of the plane, maybe not even knowing what the whole thing looked like.
Wow. So Area 51 itself had to change to handle this new plant.
Big time. National Geographic says they needed major upgrades, a much longer reinforced concrete runway, new specialized hangars.
So it went from a temporary spot to something more permanent.
Definitely. A much more advanced facility. But even then, hiding the A-12 was a headache. Soviet spy satellites were watching.
Right.
They apparently tried moving the planes inside buildings, but then the satellites picked up their heat signatures.
Huh. That's ironic. The heat gave them away.
It really shows that constant tech battle, doesn't it? Trying to stay one step ahead.
So the spy planes were key early on, but then satellites got better.
Exactly. By the late 60s, satellite tech was advancing fast. High-flying planes became maybe a bit less critical for some recon. In National Geographic notes, this shift led to the Air Force taking over Area 51, and the focus pivoted towards stealth.
Ah, the dawn of stealth technology. This is where it gets really secret, right?
You got it. The level of secrecy, according to aviation historian Peter Merlin, was considered like on par with the Manhattan Project, maybe even more secret.
Wow. And what kind of stealth planes are we talking about?
Well, National Geographic lists some of the icons tested there. Is F-117 Nighthawk.
The angular one.
That's the one. The B-2 Spirit bomber, the F-22 Raptor fighter, and loads of unmanned drones, too.
So it really became the proving ground for revolutionary aircraft.
Absolutely. Which, naturally leads us to some of the more unconventional stories.
Okay, let's go there. Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar, yeah. His interviews, especially that one on Joe Rogan, give this really detailed account from the late 1980s.
Right.
He claims he didn't work at the main Area 51 site, but at a place called S4, about 15 miles south.
And he claimed a background at Los Alamos National Labs before that.
That's his claim, yeah. Which for some people gives his story a bit more weight,
So what did he say he did at S4?
He described seeing 9 different alien spacecraft. 9.
Wow.
And said his job was specifically to figure out their power sources and propulsion systems. Reverse engineering, essentially.
And the propulsion, that was the really wild part of his claim, wasn't it? Anti-gravity.
Yeah, the reactor. He described this small reactor that he said generated its own gravitational field. Anti-gravity effects.
Did he say what it felt like?
He did. He described putting his hand near it and feeling this repelling force, like trying to push 2 magnets together.
That's specific.
Very. And he stressed the compartmentalization again. Said he only got limited info, just focused on the reactor and propulsion.
What about inside the craft? Did he describe that?
Yeah, he mentioned seeing one with 3 small seats arranged around this central reactor, and instead of normal controls, just these large sort of rectangular objects, no buttons, no joysticks. And he claimed these craft didn't give off much heat, and they didn't have a magnetic field you could measure, which, if true, would be, well, extraordinary.
Did he ever see one fly?
He claims he did. Says he witnessed a test flight with someone actually inside one of the craft.
And the origin story, where did he say they came from?
Zeta Reticuli. He said the briefing materials he saw pointed to the Zeta Reticuli star system.
That name pops up a lot in UFO stuff.
It does. And he even recalled a colleague mentioning that one craft, at least, might have come from an archaeological dig. Dug up, not crashed.
An archaeological dig. Okay, that's out there.
It's a remarkable claim, and his time there apparently ended pretty abruptly.
Right, he tried to show friends or something.
That's his story. Tried to show friends the test flights, got caught, put under surveillance, and then his employment was terminated.
Okay, so that's Lazar's narrative, but then there's a completely different story, right? Annie Jacobsen.
Totally different angle. Yeah, Annie Jacobsen, she discussed her findings on Joe Rogan, too. Her source was apparently a major player in the Manhattan Project and the Atomic Energy Commission.
A heavy hitter then.
Sounds like it. And this source told her Area 51 was actually set up in 1951, not 55, specifically to study a captured Soviet flying saucer.
Soviet.
Not Soviet. Designed to look like an alien craft. Part of a Stalinist propaganda plan.
Yeah. Oh, propaganda. What about the occupants?
This is the really unsettling part of her account. The claim is the occupants weren't aliens, but surgically altered humans, maybe even handicapped children.
Oh, that's disturbing.
Deeply disturbing. The idea was to crash it in the U.S., cause panic, make people think it was aliens, so confusion.
So Jacobsen's theory completely dismisses the alien angle.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And she expresses skepticism about Bob Lazar in her book, suggesting maybe he just saw some really advanced U.S. tech, not ET craft.
So 2 completely conflicting origin stories from seemingly credible or at least detailed sources.
Exactly. It really highlights how polarized the explanations are.
Okay, so we have Lazar's reverse engineering story, Jacobsen's Soviet propaganda story. What else? Dr. Greer.
Right, Dr. Stephen Greer's Disclosure Advocate series. This brings in accounts from alleged insiders and contactees. One key bit is a briefing described by a source codenamed Yankee Black.
Yankee Black. Okay. What did this briefing cover?
It talked about 2 alleged crash sites in New Mexico, back in 47 and 49, near Corona and another at Horse Mesa.
Roswell timeframe, basically.
Right around then, yeah. The account claims they recovered oval-shaped craft from both sites, along with deceased beings.
And a live one.
And according to this briefing, one live extraterrestrial was recovered and taken to Kirtland Air Force Base.
Was there a description of this being?
Very specific description. No external ears, just an indentation for a nose, big dark eyes, a tight-fitting suit, and 4 fingers with these suction cup-like devices on the tips.
Suction cups. Huh. And the craft.
Oval-shaped, apparently crashed during a storm. The briefing mentioned sophisticated avionics, hand-operated controls, some kind of headset for piloting, and a zero-point energy device as the power source.
Zero-point energy. That's theoretical, right? Tapping energy from space itself?
Highly theoretical, yeah. The source also described other craft mentioned in briefings, cigar-shaped ones, wide saucer-shaped ones, and a little oval one-seater.
A whole fleet, potentially. And what was the perceived threat, according to this briefing?
It was mixed. Maybe reconnaissance before an invasion, maybe interest in Earth's minerals, like uranium, or maybe they were concerned about our atomic weapons development.
All plausible motives, if you accept the premise. What about the beings themselves? Any more detail?
The briefing allegedly included details from autopsy photos from the corona crash. Very unusual anatomy described.
Like what?
Things like a single combined heart-lung organ, multiple stomachs, an organ specifically for extracting moisture, 11 lobes in the brain instead of our 4, different spinal cord structure, really complex eyes.
Wow. That's incredibly detailed anatomical description.
It is. The account also mentions artifacts supposedly recovered from a contactee, a heart-shaped object, statues, and a star chart that some thought pointed towards. Guess where?
Let me guess. Zeta Reticuli.
Bingo. Echoing Lazar's claim again.
Interesting connection? Or maybe cross-contamination of stories?
Hard to say. The Greer material also mentions sightings near nuclear facilities, the whole Paul Benowitz affair with alleged NSA tapping and disinformation.
Right. That's a complex side story itself.
It is. And finally, Greer's source recounted personally seeing a craft over Groom Lake doing maneuvers that seemed physically impossible for our tech.
Another unverified sighting, but adding to the pile.
Exactly. Another piece in this huge, confusing puzzle.
Okay, so we've covered Lazar, Jacobson, Greer. These are pretty wild, often conflicting accounts. Let's bring it back towards the more conventional explanations.
Right. So Asteroid reminds us, and it's important, that Area 51 has been officially acknowledged now.
But acknowledged as what?
As a site for developing and testing advanced aircraft and stealth tech. That's the official line.
Which could explain a lot of the sightings, right? Experimental planes doing weird things.
Entirely plausible.
Yeah.
Many UFO reports over the decades could easily be misidentified tests of things like the U-2, the A-12, the F-117, drones, things the public had never seen before.
And the CIA declassified documents back in 2013.
They did. Confirming their big role in the spy plane programs during the Cold War, that lent a lot of weight to the idea that much of the early mystery was just necessary secrecy around cutting edge, but human-made technology.
Makes sense. What about more recent stuff? Any official hints?
Asteroid touches on newer speculation, like maybe involvement in space defense technologies.
Yeah.
But that's more speculative.
And we shouldn't forget the human cost of all this secrecy and testing.
Absolutely not. National Geographic featured Fred Dunham, who developed serious lung disease, COPD. He claimed it was from burning hazardous materials used in building the aircraft out there. A stark reminder that behind the mystique, real people worked in potentially dangerous conditions.
Definitely. So the bottom line from the conventional view is, it's a lab.
Pretty much. As aerospace engineer T.D. Barnes put it in that Nat Geo doc, Area 51 is fundamentally a technological laboratory, always pushing the limits of aviation.
And the work there is still ahead of the curve.
He suggested it's still light years ahead of what we know publicly. And Peter Merlin, the historian, concluded that many projects tested there, manned or unmanned, might stay secret for decades more.
So the secrecy itself is ongoing.
That enduring secrecy, that's really the heart of the Area 51 story, isn't it? Whether it's hiding advanced jets or something else.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, it feels like we're standing at this weird crossroads.
It really does. On one side, you've got the official story. Advanced planes, stealth tech, necessary Cold War secrecy. Makes a lot of sense. But then you have this persistent, powerful undercurrent of other stories. Lazar, Greer, even Jacobson's weird Soviet angle, claims of alien craft, reverse engineering, government cover-ups.
And even though the government finally admitted, yes, Area 51 exists, we test planes there, that hasn't stopped the speculation, has it?
Not one bit. The sheer length and depth of the secrecy, past and present, just keeps fueling the public imagination. It makes people wonder if the plane testing is the whole story.
Right. Is it just planes, or is that a cover for something more?
And that really leaves us with a big question for you, the listener, to think about. We've looked at declassified documents, expert analysis, firsthand accounts that are compelling but often contradictory. Factoring in what we know about government secrecy, what possibilities about what really goes on or went on at Area 51, what feels most persuasive to you?
And maybe digging a bit deeper. What does this whole enduring mystery, our collective fascination with Area 51, tell us about ourselves? About our relationship with the unknown, maybe? Our need for answers beyond the everyday?
It's definitely something to mull over. The truth might be hidden in plain sight, or might be far stranger than we can imagine.